towards the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. Right now, I think the invocation answers every single one of your questions and themes. The invocation as a concentration, as a prayer, as a request, as an acknowledgement, an affirmation. That is, what is it that we are longing for? Where are we going? How are we handling the realities of everyday life and the living reality of the soul and the relationship with God and the wisdom perspective that we want to have at the center of our decisions, our actions, our presence, our sense of self, our awareness and understanding, our values towards the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty. We can just hang out on that much of the invocation and just like, what would it mean to put that at the beginning and at the center of everything in our lives towards the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty? And how do we do that? And what are the obstacles and the confusions and the distractions? And what are the ways that we get tangled up in resistance and doubt and uncertainty and also the very human qualities of resentment and judgment and limitation towards the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty? So many of our practices are us reminding ourselves about what is already here, what is already true, what we already are, what we already know. And we think that our prayers or practices are inviting something new, are somehow introducing us to something or discovering something. But, well, maybe discovering in the way of the actual word that is discovering, that is removing the cover. It's removing the cover. It's removing the veil. It's removing the obscuration so we can see what is already there, so we can feel what's already true. Reminders of how to keep one's spirit alive. The spirit is always alive. You don't have to keep it alive. You just have the opportunity to show up for the reality and the awareness that always has been, is now, and always will be. Then there's really a deeper question about why are we unwilling to see it? Why do we spend so much of our lives unwilling to see what is fundamentally, eternally, always true? A lot of that we are in charge of. Not all of it all the time, but a lot of it a lot of the time. And more so, we're more in charge of it more often when we are willing to look at it. And it's not about our capacity. It's not about what we can experience, see, feel, know is what we're willing to see, feel, and know. In that case, maybe the practices are better aimed toward cultivating the willingness. How do we lean more into the willingness? How do we invite and incentivize ourselves to be motivated in that direction? Life is hard. The life of limitation in human existence, in a body, in the world, it's a struggle. Nobody says otherwise. That's not a surprise. That's not a unique realization. It's a struggle. The constantly jarring influences of life, as Murshid says. One of my favorite phrases of his, obviously. I come back to it a lot. The constantly jarring influences of life. He didn't say the easy, harmonious, free-flowing, effortless experiences of life. The natural, idyllic beauty in every moment. That's true too, but he does acknowledge it's the constantly jarring influences of life. And he also says, Randy, I'm sorry to bring this to you, but he also says, the more we develop in our spiritual evolution, the more sensitive we become, not less. The more sensitive we become, the more heartbreak we experience, the more pain we experience, the more susceptible we are to the suffering in the world. And that's not a problem with the path. It's the reality, and it's a value system in our Sufi perspective. We don't want to become hardened by the world. We don't want our hearts to become cold because of the harshness of the world. Murshid says to do that is a weakness. To become cold or hardened is a weakness. We want to become warm and soft and responsive and sensitive. And to do that along with wisdom, along with a clarity, a cleanness of a wisdom perspective. And those are not mutually exclusive. Those happen together. There's a lot of suffering that we invite upon ourselves because of our very egocentric tendency toward a victim mentality. How could this happen to me? How could they not understand me? How could this happen? Poor me, poor me. Murshid said self-pity is the worst poverty. So how do we overcome that tendency? For those of us, or for those of you who have that particular wound. And it's common, and it's a pervasive mentality, especially in Western culture, not all over the world, but certainly in Western culture. That includes all of North America, all of Western Europe. some other places too, but those ones, it's like a sweeping, it's a social value. We're actually very proud of our victim mentality. Yeah. How fun is that? We're very proud of our victim mentality. It's like it's shaping everything about our societal values. Oh my gosh. The more victimized you can be, the better. Oh, all right, y'all. This is not in any way to minimize or to dismiss the things that are legitimate struggle and suffering. There is legitimate struggle and suffering. So I'm not dismissing any of that. That's true. And when there is any form of struggle and suffering and the realities of the stresses and the demands of everyday life, we want to be able to engage with that as skillfully, as consciously, as wisely and masterfully as possible. And we cannot do that if we are loyal to a victim mentality. Poor me, and how could they robs us of all of our power and capacity. And all of our power and capacity only exists in harmony with, hand in hand with the will of God. Qaza and Qadr are the words that Murshid uses for human will and God will. And we need both. And he describes that everything that we are able to do, to accomplish, is because we are in right relation, in harmony between those two powers. There was a question that came up in the initial check-ins about how much of my perspective and struggle with these things is because of my suspicious nature. That was the phrase for it. How much of this is because of my suspicious nature? And how responsible am I for this situation? And the Sufi value system is all of it. We are responsible for all of it, and all of our resistance and struggle and suffering and disharmony is because of our nature, and it's our lower nature, I should say. It's a lower level of nafs, of the self-identity, the self-structure. But we also all have the higher nature, the higher level of the nafs. I said it like it's one level, but it's a spectrum that, and we can move between those identifications and those self-expressions and the self-understanding according to our own capacity and our own will. It's just like, when in our very like basic human awareness, we can say, if you want to feel better, smile. Putting a smile on the face puts a smile in the body. That puts a smile in the heart. I don't mean a grimace. I mean a smile. You want to feel better? Smile. It works. It doesn't change the outer circumstances, but it shifts the inner attitude, the inner atmosphere, even just a tiny bit. How to be in tune with the infinite. There are some processes in Sufism that we come back to a lot that are mushahida, muhasiba, muraqaba, that are all in a realm of stepping out of the self-identification and the limitations of the personal perspective, the personal values, the personal reactivity, the personal, into the perspective that is more vast, more balanced, more objective, of the witness, of the loving guardian, of the accounter, that is the God perspective that is available to us to some extent, and it varies per person, but all of us can step back from the self, step into a wider view to be able to see things with more wisdom, with more capacity, more spaciousness, less attachment to agenda and preference. What's a good Sufi way to handle mistakes? Astaghfirullah, always astaghfirullah, always astaghfirullah. And also, uh, oh gosh, oh, there's a lovely little parade of phrases and practices happening in my brain right now. There was a little version from Murshid Sam, Sufi Ahmed Murad Chishti, Samuel Lewis, uh, who talked about having a phase, uh, just some little period of time of feeling really fixated on his own shortcomings, on just messing things up and doing things badly and clumsily, and really getting down on himself, and falling into self-berating and self-criticism, and then hearing the voice of God saying, "Your imperfections are my perfections." Your imperfections are my perfections. Everything about our human beingness, everything about this human experience, every detail of our personalities, our motives, our thoughts, feelings, and actions, every single one of them is the design, the creation, the vision of God coming into human expression. That's not an invitation to get complacent about it and not to improve, but it is a perspective and a way of understanding that it is all part of the perfection. And from that understanding, we have much more capacity, spaciousness to cultivate wisdom and to shape our own thoughts, feelings, and actions according to our higher ideals. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording, come back to you for a while. The question now is how to know the difference between God will and human will. There are a lot of different answers to that, and I love the perspective that one of us on here just brought, that The God will isn't about the limited perspective of just one person's will. It's the whole big perspective of life unfolding, of all beings, of all of creation. And there is a way that each of us individually tries or can try to touch into that, to understand it, to discern it, to feel it. And for most of us, I don't know, maybe for none of us on here, but certainly for most of us, it doesn't come in a booming voice of God that is a specific tone of voice that speaks in words directly to our own awareness, that it's more subtle than that. And each of us can determine and develop the ways of speaking, asking, listening, and receiving the responses, the information, the guidance that is available for each of us. Murshid describes this combination of God will and human will in several ways, that you can tell that when there is an alignment of personal will and God will, things come out nicely, things go. And it doesn't mean that it's easy, because there is a right amount of concerted effort that is up to each of us to bring. But we can get a sense of like, oh yes, this is happening. There's a productivity, there's a flow, there's a way that things open and move when that alignment is in harmony. And there is a way that there is a resistance, and that we can, in our humanness, we can gather up all of our determined, self-referenced, self-sourced will and apply it, and we can still make things happen. And the fruits of it will not be as beautiful or as harmonious, or the flow, the process of it will not be as easeful, or um, so we get to watch for that. And it takes some time. It takes some experience. For me, I like to look to actual pictures of Murshid for insight, for uh, input. That's the word for it. When I go, hey, Murshid, this this idea, this project, this thing arose in my awareness, and is that mine to do? And do you want me to do that? Would that be a good choice? Is that right? And that leads into a very specific quality and process that's available to us in the Sufi path, that is the series of fana, that is fana fi sheikh first, that is really putting ourselves into alignment, into rhythm, into the atmosphere, that is really trying, intending, and working toward letting go of our self attachments and self reliance into the living wisdom of the teacher, Fanafi Sheikh. And then it goes from that like immediate teacher that you can know and have a relationship with and ask about and refer to. Then it goes into a bigger form beyond that. We put our confidence in the Sheikh because we know that the Sheikh has put their confidence in the Rasul, in the Prophet, in the bigger form, the vaster perspective of the messenger. Fanafi Rasul is the next one. Sometimes people put Fanafi Pir in there, but not necessarily. The most common one is from Fanafi Sheikh, personal teacher, to Fanafi Rasul, to the Prophet, to Fanafi Allah. That is completely in alignment with the will of God. That is completely dissolving the self into the atmosphere, into the living being of God. And those things are all linked up together. They're like the Russian nesting dolls, right? We go into this one because we know that that's in this one, because we know that's in this one, because we know that that's in this one, right? And it's different for each of us. Marshall also talks about the qualities of the the saint or the master. That is it more your nature to be surrendered, to be soft and yielding, and to accommodate and allow? Or is it more your nature to take hold and to direct and to discern and act according to your own knowing of right volition? So, those qualities and how we each experience the harmony of personal will and God will is also tied to our temperament. That is the energy and atmosphere of our own unique being. How we get into rhythm with life is the same thing. That Murshid describes a way of being like when adults are having a serious, quiet adult conversation, and there are some children that are playing and being very rambunctious and disruptive nearby. The best way is not to scold them and say, "Can't you see the adults are talking? Be quiet." The way is to get down on the floor and play with them and to get into the atmosphere of the children. And once you are there and harmonized with the activity and the energy that's happening, then you are in a position to implement some influence and to invite an adjustment in the atmosphere into something more harmonious, something more lovely. How to become more aware and understand oneself. Oh, I did mention. Um, so the the specific practice, I shouldn't call it a specific practice. Mm, I mentioned mushahida. That is a daily review process. It is every single day taking some time to look at how we're doing, what's happening, what is this self that right here in the human form, the thoughts, feelings, motives, actions, to be able to step back and to look at that honestly and cleanly and clearly, not from inside, not from within the limitation of those perspectives and feelings, but from beyond, from above, from a place of remove, a little bit removed, not infinitely removed, just a little bit removed, witnessing oneself. That's literally what mushahida is. It's witnessing oneself. And it is helpful for some to be able to write about that, to actually take note, either literally or figuratively, of what is it that you see? What is it that you can witness, observe, and to try to understand about what's happening in this human picture. And that process is not about trying to change anything. It's just seeing ourselves truly as we are. If we know that we carry around a lot of resistance about really seeing ourselves, it can be helpful to start with practices of compassion, of worthiness, of remembering that this human being, this human self, is an expression and is a ray of God. So whatever we find here is accepted and loved as part of God. And that can help us feel a little more courage and a little more willingness to see what's truly there. Oh, that constant heartbreak. Murshid said, God will break the heart again and again until it stays open. God will break the heart again and again until it stays open. And also, because Sufism is the path of wisdom, it is said to be the religion of the heart, but it's not actually called the religion of heartbreak. It's the path of wisdom. And wisdom is what allows the heart to open. Like the beautiful names of God for forgiveness, the 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 cluster of four names, Al-Ghafar, Al-Ghafur, At-Tawwab, Al-Afu, that each of these have a different qualities, and the one that is Al-Ghafur, that is woven into Astaghfirullah, is the one that is about understanding. It's about bringing in the light of awareness that when there's a transgression, when there's a pain, when there is a disharmony, if we can understand it, then forgiveness flows naturally and easily. The light of awareness, of understanding, allows the grace to flow. I love this thing that one of you said about, for a while, wanting to find meaning in the absurdity of the world, and then realizing that we don't want to find meaning in it because it's insane. Like, why would we look for meaning in that? It is, that wasn't exactly what you said, but that was how I took it. Like, uh, maybe we don't need to find meaning, or maybe it's that we don't find our safety and security and capacity for compassion and peace by uh, making sense of the things that don't make sense. There is a way, to some extent, that that pursuit of information understanding can help us, and there's a limitation to that. That is, and when we hit that limitation, then we fall into, well, then we can fall into apathy and hopelessness, or we can fall into the felt sense, the emotion, the heart, the qualities of devotion and love. And I do think that those things work together, that especially for, and it's different for different people. Some people really find a lot of confidence and have a lot of energy and enthusiasm and take a lot of enjoyment through really studying and understanding and analyzing and putting the intellect in charge. And there are others that don't find that interesting or helpful at all, and that put all of the energy and attention into the heart, into the qualities of love and devotion. And then there are some of us that find a mix. And for me, and maybe for some of you, there's a way that we bounce between them depending on what feels interesting and useful in this moment, or we pursue one of them to the extent that we can, and then we hit a wall, then we go ricocheting back in the other direction. We hit a wall and go ricocheting back in the other direction. So there's some way that we can navigate those things according to the right balance for each of us, and it will be different for each person. There was also a brilliant thing that one of you said about realizing that the way that we perceive the world, or the world that is presented to, the aspects of the world that are presented to us, are predicated on our former strong beliefs. And I love that for so many reasons. First, I love that we can recognize that that's true. That is, what do we call that? Um, it's the bias, it's the agreement bias. It's like that we look for the things that align with and are resonant with the beliefs we're already holding. And we are unwilling to look at anything else. We are unwilling to even acknowledge or to be open to perceiving anything that bumps up against the beliefs that we already hold, the assumptions we've already made. And having the awareness that that is how we perceive the world, or how the world is presented to us, or and the algorithms that we get to experience in the digital realm is such an amazing, stark, obvious example of how we naturally function in our psyches anyway. And it is not the smartest. It is not the vastest perspective. It is not the most objective. It is not the most true. It's just what we're most willing to see. It's what we're most willing to accept because we'll enjoy it. It will feel good. And it feels good on the ego. It's the confirmation of what we already think we know in our own self-reliance. That's what feels so good. And that's why it's so inaccurate and unhelpful, unclean. So this is where Mersha describes the process of unlearning. That, yeah, we all have our strong beliefs, thoughts, knowings. And when we get to the point of seeing them as our former strong thoughts, beliefs, and knowings, then we're on the right track for the Sufi path of wisdom. We're not on the right track for self-aggrandizing, self-righteous, continuing and perpetuating the polarizing narratives. But then we are on the right track for the Sufi path of wisdom. Unlearning. So high five for any of you who are doing that. Okay. One more tidbit before we put a pause on this again. The point of waiting, of stopping, of stillness, the pause. In the Sufi terminology, we would call that kamal. And there's the kamal moment of the pause that happens between any one thing and any other thing. That is the shift moment of a transition of energy. And in the way that it showed up in this check-in conversation today, that is like on the precipice of a change of season, that we can feel like those qualities we would call Arouge and Javal, and Kamal is the point in between. So Arouge is the rising energy. It's when we have a lot of resource and capacity and enthusiasm to be active in the world and to make things happen. And then there's the pause where that shifts into the ebb, the flow and the ebb qualities, when the energy falls away. But that pause is called Kamal, and it's said to be lots of different things. That sometimes it's called perfection, sometimes it's called culmination, and sometimes it's called conflict or destruction. And that's not necessarily in a bad way. It's just that there's the point where those energies are exactly balanced. It is a clash between different energies. We're like, are we still active or are we taking a nap? I don't know. I can't decide. And so there's a conflict between the activity and the rest. And that moment before the tone is set into a new vibration is called Kamal. And the instruction in any Kamal moment, in any Kamal experience, energy in our lives, is to allow the weight, to respect the weight, to respect that instruction, to pause and to be still and to listen for the tone of the next arising energy. I shouldn't call it arising, the next prevalent energy, so that we can align with that and be in harmony with that and participate in that in a beautiful, healthy way. Yes, this whole thing about building up the nafs and then dissolving it. But you can't dissolve it if you don't build it up first. I often, well, first Murshid goes through this point of unlearning that we get to on the Sufi path. It comes after a whole lot of years of learning. And that is the task, to come into this world and to learn all the things of this world that we can, to develop and explore and gather up our strategies and our knowledge and our systems. And it is a building up of the nafs. And then when we get to the point in our lives, in our unfoldment and our development, that we are ready to start dissolving it, that's the beginning of the unlearning. And I frequently tie this back into more of a psychology perspective. That is Carl Jung, who refused to work with any patients under the age of 40, because up until the age of 40, we're busy developing the ego. We're busy developing all of our understandings and experiences, and we're not ready to start unpacking the big sack of shadows and to start bringing everything into the light. So after the age of 40, it's like get to work. So it's in a different form of getting to work. Yeah. Okay. So Zirat, who was it that said, well, it doesn't matter right now, but one of you mentioned Zirat and really wanting to work more with that quality, that aspect, that ray of Sufism. So, oh, because I think it was tied to waterfalls and big trees. So we have a beautiful pool of resources that is Murshid's nature meditations. And the nature meditations are really just setting an example and giving us a template of some beginning points of contemplation for really engaging with Zirat, that is the wisdom of nature. And Murshid would describe that nature is everyday life. It isn't just that you don't have to go anywhere to observe and to learn from and to put the wisdom of nature at the center of your contemplation and your development. That you can do that from everybody in your own rooms right now, that most of you look like you're indoors. Great. You can explore nature indoors. That is looking at the nature of the systems of your own physical body. Your physical body is nature. It's looking at the elements that comprise the furniture and the floors and the walls and the ceilings and the contemplation of the different colors that are around you. And it's going, what are the things that we can learn and that we can experience within ourselves by getting into that vibration, that awareness, the purpose and the expression and the beauty that God created and then man has shaped as an expression, as a further development. So the aspect of Zirat as a concentration on the spiritual path, I do strongly encourage any and all of you to work with Murshid's nature meditations, to look through his collection of contemplations. Most of them are 2 lines. One of the lines will be an inhalation, one of the lines is an exhalation, with some specific words that are just really inviting us to have a relationship and a dialogue and to learn from the expressions of nature. And I also strongly encourage any of us, you, to develop your own nature meditations. That is, in what ways do you want to learn from and immerse yourself in the wisdom that is available in nature? And find any aspect of nature and be really curious about that and try to get into that atmosphere, that perspective, that quality, that purpose, that expression, and go, wow, what does that mean? So, for example, yesterday morning, no, yesterday at noon, because it was part of our daily prayer practice, and I was doing the nature meditations and looking out the window, and there's a squirrel in my front yard that runs up the stalk of a sunflower that is still pretty strong, but then it bends over and ends up like a squirrel on the ground, still holding onto the top of the sunflower stalk, you know? So I'm immediately going like, whoa, look at that experience of this adorable little creature, the squirrel, and going like, what does it feel like to be the squirrel that is noticing where there's a resource that is the sunflower head, that is looking for the sustenance and climbing up a stalk to find it, and then finding itself on the ground, holding on to the resource that it wanted, and then needing to make a choice. Now, how can we learn from this expression of nature that is the pursuit of the desired object that then has us back down on the ground and needing to decide, do we hold on to that one? Do we let go of it? How do we navigate the resources that are available to us and our natural inclinations and desires? That's what Ziraat is. It's looking at every expression of nature and going, what can I learn from that? What is my version of that? How do I develop more wisdom, more skills, more grace in harmony with the world around me by observing and attuning to the expressions of nature? Finally, we have 3 minutes. Shirag training. That's my last note on here. There are a few others that we didn't quite touch on, but I think we basically covered things. So I think that all of you know, but I'll say it again, that a shirag is the word that Murshid used for a minister in the Sufi path. It literally means a lantern or a lamp or a light. And so Shirag training is minister training. And it does involve learning about, studying, and practicing the universal worship service, which is the very specific ceremony that Murshid offered that includes all the faith traditions represented on one altar in one service, ceremony, religious practice. And the Shirag training also includes a lot of other forms of ministry. What does it mean to provide spiritual resource for your community? What are the qualities and competencies that are required for someone who is trying to serve their community in this way? And so it's a 2-year program that I facilitate. And right now we have another month and a half, almost 2 months, that I'm inviting people to express their interest by answering some questions and opening a conversation with me to see if that is a training that you would like to participate in. Some of you have already done it. Oh, oh, yeah, because Zahira is already an ordained Shirag, and one of you is currently in training with me. I don't know if there are a couple of you that I don't know. Maybe you're or already Shirags or training with other people, but at least one of you is training with me right now. So we'll have more conversation about that next Saturday morning at this time to answer questions about logistics and also about the personal experience and how that goes for some of the people who are doing the training. So all of you are welcome to participate in that if you like, wherever you are in that journey or interest. Okay, friends, that's all the time we have for today. I'm so grateful to be with you. I hope there was something useful in here for you today. I look forward to seeing you for our daily prayer Zoom in 26 minutes is when I'll open the Zoom. Okay, big blessings, lots of love. Thanks, friends. Bye for now.